This is something very exciting because key glossary terms. ICF has introduced a glossary of terms in 2025 of the ICF core competence, something new that's never happened before. And this is something that I've discussed, with the working group as well, and say, hey, wouldn't it be great if we can have a definition of terms of our common understanding? Now, there is a important balance that we need to recognize that if we overly emphasize definitions of terms for every single thing, we'll lose the spirit of it. So I can understand the balance that we need to drive at, but also to encompass a rough, common definition so that we don't misunderstand what we mean by different words and terms all around the world. And so here, I want to highlight certain key ideas of why it matters. So the glossary in this new appendix that ICF has introduced in the core competency update, it clarifies the language of coaching, so coaches can apply the competencies with precision, and common misunderstanding can cause coaches to misapply competencies or overstep the boundaries because of the misinterpretation of different terms that's used in the conversation. For example, words like knowledge, insights, is there a difference? Right. So learning these glossary terms are so critical. And in fact, I will have a whole video series that will dive into each and every one of these distinctions in greater detail. And oftentimes I say this: language shape practice. Clarity in words lead to clarity in coaching. So how clear you are in shaping the practice, it's very important because that's how you will lead the conversation, or that's how you co-create the conversation, and that's how you partner with the client. And I've highlighted several key nuances. There are a lot of glossary here, but for this first introductory video, I want to highlight 5 key words that I think is going to be useful for you. The first being bias. We can kind of seem to understand bias, but ICF defines it as a difference in perception, interpretation, or judgment, shaped by internalized beliefs, values, preferences, and cultural assumptions. They can result in an inclination for or against an idea, object, group, or individual. And this is something important for coaches to be aware of because our own bias can influence our questions, the way we listen, the way we reflect, the way we hold presence. The common misunderstanding is that we believe that bias only means prejudice or overt discrimination, but don't realize that sometimes the positive thing that we try to do is actually also our own bias. Thinking that noticing bias makes one a bad coach, instead, awareness of bias is a sign of ethical maturity. We cannot remove all the biases, but are we aware of the biases so we can address them and allow ourselves to learn from them? Okay, so bias is not the shadow to deny, but the lens to notice and to adjust the way we converse, the way we communicate. So to say that we come into the conversation with no bias is impossible. But are we aware? Are we growing in deeper awareness of our own biases as well? That's the first one. Second, well-being. I like this portion because many times, we talk about well-being, our clients' well-being, the client's well-being, but do we really understand what does it mean to have well-being? So ICF's definition for well-being is this: a person's emotional and psychological state of overall health and happiness, encompassing resilience, positive emotions, and effective coping with life challenges. Beautiful definition. I think this captures the core essence of what it means to have well-being. And it's coaches are now expected to maintain their well-being also. So it's not just for the client, but for the coaches. Competency number 2, coaching mindset, talks about that. And client well-being must also be respected. And coaching is not about pushing through at all costs. It's about honoring them at where they are, meeting them at their need. Common misunderstanding is that reducing well-being to just self-care, just resting, meditation, mindfulness. Not quite. Well-being is more all-encompassing rather than just self-care. Self-care is one part of it, but it's all-encompassing. Okay? And overlooking emotional readiness and resilience as part of well-being. Well-being is more than just self-care, right? It's more than just resilience, but resilience, emotional readiness is part of well-being as a whole. And well-being is the ground from which presence develops and grows in. The third one, which I thought was quite interesting, was this idea of without attachment. Because a lot of phrases say without attachment, without attachment. What does it really mean? It's a practice of engaging in a coaching process without overly invested in specific outcomes or specific directions, and allowing flexibility and openness. I like this, right? So not overly invested in certain direction that we like. And so, for example, the coach can share observations in competency 7, but not attached to being right. And it keeps autonomy and meaning making with the client. So think about attachment, right? We are so attached to this idea, but without attachment means we hold it loosely. And that doesn't mean that we don't share at all. We can share, but without attachment. Okay, so to share without attachment is to give a gift with an open hand, allowing the client to accept or to reject. The fourth one, which I think is quite important, is this idea of worldview, the overall perspective from which a person sees and interprets the world, influencing their beliefs, their values, and action. And coaches must respect the client's worldview rather than imposing our own. We have our own worldview, but are we aware of how our own worldview is impacting our listening, our ability to ask questions, and also converse with the client? Or are we oversimplifying the world just by reading a book and saying, oh, this is a worldview, that's a worldview, this is a culture? In fact, I'm often I often tell coaches, I say, don't be fixated with different cultural dimensions, like the high power distance, low power distance, collectivistic, individualistic, or different generation attitudes. There's different terms for every single thing. Don't classify people into one box, because sometimes oversimplifying worldview can impact our own worldview to listen to our clients. To honor a client's worldview is to walk with them through their lens and not our own. And that's something important. And finally, I think this is very important, the technology part. Technology from the ICF context, it's tools, platforms, systems used by coaches to enhance coaching process, including digital platforms, apps, video conferencing, AI systems that facilitate goal tracking, communication, and progress monitoring. So technology is now increasingly part part of our everyday life, and this is introduced more in competency number 2 on the coaching mindset, but also for coaches to think about the ethical dimensions of how we are using technology to shape our coaching delivery. Coaching is to serve, support the coaching conversation. We're not here to just reject technology entirely, but to also understand that it can expand coaching, but can never replace presence. So people often ask me, can AI replace a coach? Well, simple answer and questions, AI can be done, but mastery of coaching, presence, trust, ability to apply artistry, when to ask the question, when to evoke awareness, those are things that AI cannot replace. Your ability to have that human connection, it's your human algorithm that can never be replaced with AI. And finally, the glossary that ICF has listed is not to confine, but to clarify. It gives us a certain idea of what the terms mean, and a general common understanding of what it is. And it's to us as coaches to spend time reflecting, thinking about, discussing, engaging with communities. In fact, I welcome you to subscribe to my channel on YouTube, on my podcast series on Brave Your Story, because I truly want to help coaches all around the world and clients all around the world to brave their own story. What is written anchors us, and what is not written frees us to wonder. Allow coaching conversation to create a space for you to wonder and to enjoy the beauty of this world. And that's the beauty of coaching. And I hope you enjoy this series, because this short introductory series gives you an opportunity to step into the world of coaching, understand the new updates that's happening around the world. And I want to welcome you to join me in the journey of coaching. If you're thinking about learning more about coaching and what coaching really is, or deepening your mastery, regardless if you have taken coaching programs before, or perhaps you say, hey Jedi, I'm looking for a coach, and could you coach me through some things? I welcome you to connect with me. Right, you can find my contact details in the description below at jedi.coach. And I welcome you to join me in this journey as we experience coaching at a deeper level of mastery today.